Alright, so picture this, 1 year, traveling across the country and even to Europe, filming a story that's as intense as it is raw. There were lost bags, canceled flights, close calls, and even personal family crises along the way. And here's the thing, it wasn't just travel drama, it felt like real spiritual warfare. You know, it's about courage, standing up for truth, facing intimidation head on, and pushing through when it feels like everything's against you. Stick around, because this story is wild, and it's going to challenge everything you think you know. So, let me take you behind the scenes of what it actually took to put this documentary together. It wasn't just a few trips here and there, it was a full-on year-long journey. And honestly, some of the stuff that happened, I still can't believe it. I mean, it's like the universe, or, well, maybe something bigger, was throwing every curveball it could at us. And we had to just keep pushing through. We were traveling across the US. And then we even went to Europe, Munich. Specifically, now you'd think, okay, flights, hotels, a schedule, that's standard. But no. The day we were supposed to fly to Munich, the entire airport shuts down. Just like that. Frozen fog, apparently, which, yeah, I'd never even heard of frozen fog before that day, so we had to reroute Amsterdam, then Frankfurt, then a 5-hour train ride in the middle of the night to finally get to Munich. Exhausting, right? And if that wasn't enough, my bag, yeah, the one with all my clothes for filming, never showed up. So, I'm standing there, 30 minutes before we start shooting, still in the same socks and underwear from the flight. Talk about stressful. And here's the weird part. The kind of stuff that really makes you pause and think about the bigger picture. Just as we're getting ready to shoot, an icicle falls off a building, knocks a metal railing loose, and nearly hits one of our cameramen, a couple inches away from disaster. And I remember thinking, okay, this is getting intense. But then it got even heavier. We filmed at a graveside, Sophie's graveside, a deeply personal moment because our third child is actually named after her. And, well, just a few hours after filming, because of the 7-hour time change, my wife FaceTimes me from the back of an ambulance. And my daughter Sophie, she'd had a seizure. She started turning purple, and my wife thought she had died. I know, right? It's insane. Thankfully, she came back around. The ambulance took care of her, but in that moment, it felt like the enemy was saying, keep going, and this is what it costs. It was dark, really dark. And here's the thing, you feel it in moments like that. It's like spiritual warfare is real, pressing in, not just in the dramatic sense, but in the subtle, insidious ways that make you question if you're really supposed to be doing this at all. Flights canceling, bags disappearing, near accidents, personal crises, it all felt like a test. And honestly, some days it was terrifying. But you keep moving forward, right? You have to. There's no other choice. Traveling for filming was somehow harder than just regular speaking engagements. I mean, I travel a lot for speaking, but those trips never hit the home front like this did. Every time we went out to film, it felt like everything at home went sideways. Text from my wife, little emergencies piling up. You name it. And yet, somehow, we were still there, in Munich, in the middle of all this chaos, filming a story that needed to be told. And man, the emotional roller coaster. Anger, frustration, sadness, compassion, all of it. You're dealing with heavy, heavy truths, confronting things people have been lied about, and at the same time, you're facing real-world obstacles that seem almost scripted. It's exhausting, but it's also strangely galvanizing. Like, okay, if this is what it takes to expose the truth, then we're in it. Every step, every challenge, every setback, it's all part of the journey. You have to persevere, even when the path looks impossible. And there's this other layer too, the intimidation. You start to feel it creeping in, little and big ways. The kind that tries to stop you from being bold and courageous. It's not just the travel chaos or near misses. It's this looming sense of, well, pressure from every side. And that's the part that hits differently. You realize that the project itself is kind of a battlefield. And you can't just retreat because the truth you're trying to reveal, it matters. And it matters enough that you push through fear, uncertainty, and sheer exhaustion. But here's the thing, it's not just about surviving the chaos, it's about what you learn through it. Now, you see, when you're dealing with relentless obstacles, unexpected crises, and moments that feel like they're testing your very faith, you develop this patience, this grit, this ability to keep moving forward even when everything inside you wants to quit. And it's not the kind of patience that just waits. It's active, it's strategic, it's conscious. You're learning how to persevere, how to stay focused, and how to trust that there's a bigger plan unfolding. And yeah, honestly, there were moments where I questioned everything. Like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Maybe the timing's wrong. Maybe we're over our heads. And yet, somehow, we kept going. Because the stakes were too high. The story was too important, and even in the darkest moments, there's this sense of, okay, we can't give up, not now, not ever. So looking back, when you hear about all these obstacles, the frozen fog, the lost luggage, the icicle, the ambulance call, you might think, wow, that's crazy. But here's the takeaway. It wasn't just a series of unlucky events. It was a trial, a kind of spiritual pressure test. And it's exactly what prepared us to tell the story with the urgency, the courage, and the authenticity it deserves. We learned to navigate fear, to persevere through chaos, and to push forward with purpose. And honestly, that's what makes the final film hit so hard. Every struggle, every risk, every moment of intimidation, it's all woven into the story, and you can feel it when you watch it. It's messy, intense, and real, and it's exactly why it matters. Okay, now let's dive into the part that's, well, kind of mind-blowing if you've never heard it before. So, you know how sometimes you start to realize that certain ideas, movements, and cultural shifts don't just happen overnight. There's usually this long, strategic process behind them. And that's exactly what we're looking at when we talk about figures like Margaret Sanger, Carol Quigley, Antonio Gramsci, and the Frankfurt School. It's like a chess game spanning decades, and if you know the moves, you start to see the patterns that shape the culture around you. Take Margaret Sanger, for example. She's known for founding Planned Parenthood, right? But here's the thing, she wasn't just reacting to events. She was playing a long game, very patient, very strategic. She would get arrested, face setbacks, and then just keep moving forward, back on the trail, quietly building momentum. And it wasn't random. She knew how to navigate public perception, law, and social sentiment to inch her agenda forward. It's impressive, in a way. If you take out the morality debate, the point is, she understood strategy, patience, and the importance of playing the long game. And that's where someone like Carol Quigley comes in. Now, if you haven't heard of him, he was a historian and mentor to, yes, Bill and Hillary Clinton. And he wrote this book in 1966 called Tragedy and Hope. It was basically a deep dive into the inner workings of what he called the Anglo-American establishment, the elite networks, the institutions, the cultural movers and shakers. And here's the crazy part. The book was supposed to be a huge release, a big PR splash, but the very people he was writing about, his peers, the liberal establishment, decided the book went too far, too soon, exposing strategies that were not meant for public eyes yet. So they destroyed almost all copies, leaving only 2 boxes saved by, well, a warehouse worker who thought, wait, hold on a second, like, that's some real life cloak and dagger stuff right there. What Quigley was essentially documenting is something that's come to be known as the long walk through institutions. Instead of forcing change with riots, protests, or chaotic disruptions, the strategy was to patiently, methodically embed influence into the institutions that shape culture. Schools, media, universities, political offices. Think of it like gradually planting seeds in fertile soil instead of trying to smash down a wall. And when those seeds take root, the growth is subtle but powerful, and it often shapes the culture in ways most people never even notice until decades later. And then you have Antonio Gramsci, or as some sources say, Gramsci, the intellectual father of the Frankfurt School, which, by the way, is the foundation for a lot of what critical theory and critical race theory stem from. He wrote these prison letters while in jail, which later got translated for leftist thinkers in the US. Yes, and they essentially became a blueprint for influencing society from within rather than through violent upheaval. The idea was to take over the institutions that form public thought, education, media, the arts, so that ideology could slowly shape norms and values from the inside out. It's a patient, methodical, and incredibly effective approach, even if morally controversial. Here's where it gets a bit intense. The Frankfurt School scholars fled Europe during the rise of Hitler and ended up in places like Columbia University in the US. They became professors, mentors, intellectual leaders, and they didn't just talk theory, they influenced the countercultural movements, the radical student activism of the 1960s and beyond, and laid the groundwork for what some would argue is modern progressive cultural shifts. Herbert Marcuse, one of the key figures, directly influenced the free love movement, civil rights activism, and more. You start to see this chain reaction, ideas planted in the academy, nurtured in cultural movements, and eventually seeping into mainstream societal norms. So when we talk about enforced coercive toleration, this is where it really connects. The concept in a nutshell is using the appearance of mercy, compassion, or tolerance to control society. You give people the sense that you're benevolent, that you care, that you're on their side, but the real goal is control. Think of it like a parent who pretends to be all lenient and generous, while really structuring every choice so the child ends up following the path they want. That's enforced coercive toleration in practice. Governments, organizations, and leaders have used this strategy to ensure they can monopolize influence over people's hearts and minds without the messy, obvious rebellion that comes from direct oppression. A historical example of this, Soviet Russia. In the early 1920s, Stalin's enforcers banned all charitable activities, hospitals, food banks, counseling services, all absorbed by the state. The reasoning? If the state alone controls mercy and aid, then the people have no alternative sources for guidance, loyalty, or emotional influence. And interestingly, many of these leaders had seminary training. They knew the Bible, knew the principles of mercy and service, and then flipped them for political control. So instead of serving, they commanded obedience under the guise of compassion. Now, when you put this all together with what Sanger perfected in the 20th century, it's clear that there's a pattern. Pretend to care, act benevolent, and you'll gradually earn power and influence. Meanwhile, those who are genuinely serving and acting merciful, like Christians exercising real compassion, can struggle to compete because the counterfeit version seems more visible, more influential, more accessible to the masses. And this is exactly what Quigley, Gramsci, and the Frankfurt School were analyzing: the slow, patient strategy of embedding control into the institutions that shape human thought. And then you start seeing the parallels in modern society. Institutions controlling narratives, shaping what's considered normal, using appearances of mercy to sway hearts. And it's not just political, it's cultural, it's social, it's educational. And while this is complex and, yeah, a little heavy to wrap your head around at first, when you see it unfold over decades, patterns emerge. The long game is the real game, and it often works more effectively than riots, protests, or abrupt confrontations. So, reactions, right? Most people, when they hear this, they're like, wow, that's intense. Or wait, hold on. Are you saying the way culture shifts isn't random? Exactly, it's planned. And it's slow, which makes it almost invisible. You can't see it happening in a single headline or news story. It takes decades to fully realize. And the strategies themselves are meticulous, like a masterclass in patience, influence, and, well, a little bit of deception. And for us, for the viewer, the takeaway is huge. Understanding that there's strategy behind cultural shifts doesn't mean you're powerless. It just means you know how the game is played. You start to see the chessboard instead of just the pieces moving. And when you see that, you can respond, you can adapt, and maybe even engage in shaping culture with awareness and intentionality, rather than just reacting to it blindly. So yeah, in short, the historical context here, Sanger's long game, Quigley's documentation, the Frankfurt School's subtle infiltration. These aren't just old stories. They are the blueprint for understanding how ideas, institutions, and societal norms evolve over time. And if you keep your eyes open, you start noticing how the long walk through institutions is still happening today, influencing everything from politics to education to social norms. It's methodical, patient, and remarkably effective. And knowing about it, well, that's the first step in not just watching the culture shift, but understanding it, and maybe even playing a part in shaping it yourself. Alright, so here's something that really hits hard when you start looking at the bigger picture. A lot of churches today, they're silent on the big moral issues, especially when it comes to life. And when I say life, I mean literally. the very core of it. The unborn, the vulnerable, the ones who can't speak for themselves. And it's not like the Bible doesn't cover this stuff. God's word is clear. He's knitting us together in our mother's womb. He values life, and yet, somehow, so many churches just don't speak up. You start to wonder why, and it's not always malicious silence. Sometimes it's comfort, fear, or just misplaced priorities. I mean, when you look at what drives a lot of church leadership today, it's budgets, building maintenance, baptisms, keeping the donations coming in. And that's not wrong in itself. Churches need to function, but it becomes a problem when those things start to matter more than actually standing up for truth. More than preaching courage, more than guiding the next generation. And the next generation, oh man, they are thirsty, hungry, searching, confused, angry, depressed. They are struggling in ways that are unique to this time and culture, and they are looking for answers, guidance, and hope. But if the church is silent, if it's not engaging, if it's not being prophetic, then where do these young people go? They go out into the world looking for solutions elsewhere. And the world doesn't exactly have moral clarity or boundaries set by truth, so they end up lost, searching in places that often do more harm than good. And it's heartbreaking because you can see it, you can feel it. You meet them on college campuses, in youth groups, in conferences, and there's this hunger, this raw desire for understanding and direction. But the church isn't always showing up in the way it should. And here's the tough part, the contrast is stark. On one side, you have apathetic, cautious leadership that's more concerned with comfort and numbers than confronting the culture head on. On the other side, you have a generation that is desperate for truth, that is asking questions the church isn't answering. It's like having this blazing fire in front of you, but the church is handing out water instead of wood to keep it burning. And you start to realize this silence, this fear, it has real consequences, real human consequences. Lives are at stake. Faith is at stake. The future of the culture is at stake. And it's not just theoretical. There's research, there's polling, and if you know anything about Gen Z, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They are the most medicated, the most depressed, the most suicidal, and the most sexually confused generation in modern American history. That's not hyperbole, it's the reality, and they are looking for something steady, something true, something that points to hope. And yet, when pastors and churches avoid speaking out on issues of life, when they shy away from conflict or difficult conversations, they essentially send these kids to the world to figure it out for themselves. And let's be honest, the world isn't exactly a safe place for moral education, and that's where the call to bravery comes in, because it's not enough to just build nice programs, maintain buildings, and keep a congregation comfortable. There's a prophetic voice that has to rise up, and there's a role for courage and boldness, especially when the stakes are this high. The church needs to wake up, and it needs to realize that the very soul of the next generation, and really the culture at large, depends on its willingness to stand. And that's not easy, it's not convenient, it's not without risk, but the reward, oh man, the reward is salvation, hope, clarity, and the possibility of reversing trends that are otherwise devastating. You can almost feel the tension, right? It's like the church is this sleeping giant, and the culture is shifting so fast that if it doesn't rise, it will be too late for so many people. And here's the thing, some churches are waking up, they're being bold, they're preaching the full counsel of God, they're bringing truth into conflict with culture. And guess what happens? Their churches grow. Not because numbers are the goal, but because people are hungry for courage, hungry for truth, hungry for leadership that actually leads. There's a fragrance, almost like incense, that attracts those who are searching for authenticity and direction. And that's the emotional stakes. It's not just about sermons, or Sunday services, or events. It's about shaping the moral and spiritual compass of a generation. It's about speaking when it's hard, about teaching when it's uncomfortable, about standing when everyone else would stay silent. That's the prophetic voice in action. And the urgency, it's palpable. Every day of silence, every day of fear or compromise, the gap widens between what God intended and what the world presents as truth. That gap isn't theoretical, it's real, and it affects hearts, minds, and lives. So, to wrap this up, if you're watching and thinking about this, understand why this is so important. The church isn't just a building or an institution, it's a body of people. called to be the voice, the hands, the presence of God in a culture that desperately needs it. The next generation is not just waiting, they're pleading. And the difference between silence and courage, between inaction and boldness, is the difference between lost opportunities and lives changed. It's that simple. And yet, that profound. And that's why this conversation is urgent, why it matters, and why the call to rise up is louder now than ever before. Alright, so now we're getting into something super practical. How do you actually engage on these really sensitive issues, like life, abortion, and other moral topics, without coming off as harsh or judgmental? And the truth is, it's all about balance, truth and grace. You can't just hit people with facts and expect them to respond positively, but you also can't sugarcoat reality and leave out the truth that actually sets people free. It's a dance. Really, and it takes a little courage, a little prayer, and a lot of heart. One of the first things to remember is don't wait until you feel fully equipped. Most people think, oh, I can't talk about this yet. I don't know enough. I'm not ready. Nope. The reality is the culture is moving fast, and people need guidance now. C.S. Lewis said it best. Don't wait until you love your neighbor to start loving them. Just start loving, and you'll learn along the way. That's exactly how it works with conversations about life and morality. You start speaking, you start engaging, and over time, you find your voice, your timing, and the right words. And here's the kicker. Amazing things happen when you actually speak up. You don't always see immediate results, but the impact can be huge. A perfect example comes from last summer when a group of people, just ordinary folks, organized a prayer and protest outside a late-term abortion clinic near Rodeo Drive in Hollywood. It was intense. Thousands of people showed up, praying, worshiping, speaking truth in love. And here's the incredible part, the building owner received a call from their lawyer saying that the lease for the clinic had been rescinded. Just like that. One simple, organized, prayerful, and courageous stand made a direct impact. Now, obviously, you can't guarantee that every action will have such a dramatic effect, but it shows the potential power of collective action when people are willing to step up and speak. And it doesn't have to be massive events or huge campaigns. Even at the individual level, you have influence. Conversations with friends, family, co-workers, these matter. And approaching them with both truth and grace is key. Listen first, understand where they're coming from. Speak from your own experience or your own convictions. Rather than attacking or condemning, you're planting seeds. And sometimes those seeds take time to grow. The culture is crazy. The ideas are complex, and people are often confused or hurt. So patience is crucial. Post-abortive individuals are another area where this approach is life-changing. Offering love, truth, and healing can literally redirect their lives. When people are healed from past mistakes or trauma, they often become the most passionate advocates for life. They speak from experience, and their voices carry weight that's hard to replicate. So even personal engagement, quietly, with care and compassion, can ripple out and create change far beyond what you might expect. Now, speaking up can feel intimidating. I get it. You think, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I offend someone? And sure, that fear is real. But the thing is, the longer you wait for perfect words or perfect timing, the more opportunities you miss. Start small if you need to. One conversation, one comment, one social post. But don't stay silent. God can use your voice in ways you'll never anticipate. You might be the one who prevents someone from making a devastating decision, or inspires a conversation that sparks real change. And when you start thinking bigger, collective action is incredible. Organize events, prayer walks, community gatherings, even small church groups coming together for focused prayer and advocacy can send a ripple through a neighborhood or city. And when people see courage and conviction, it's contagious. You don't have to be a national leader or have a massive platform. Your local effort can have a huge impact because it's grounded in truth, grace, and consistent action. What's beautiful is that all of this works together. You have individual conversations, personal prayer, community engagement, organized events, each piece reinforcing the other. And it's not just about being vocal, it's about being strategic and intentional. Showing up, showing love, speaking truth, and acting when you can. Over time, those small acts compound, and the culture starts to shift. So, what's the takeaway here? Don't overthink. Start where you are with what you have. Combine truth with grace. Speak when it's hard. Love while you correct. Organize when possible. Pray constantly. And remember, you are not powerless. Every conversation, every action, every prayer counts. You have the potential to save lives, to heal hearts, and to make a difference that extends far beyond what you can see. And that's the beauty of it. Courage, action, and faith in small as practical steps, taken consistently, can change the world around you, one person at a time. Okay? Now this is where things really start to get exciting, because it's not just theory or conversation, it's action. This is the part where we talk about mobilizing communities, taking the principles we've been discussing, and actually putting them into motion. The White Rose Resistance chapters are a huge part of that. The idea is simple but bold. Local groups spread across the country, taking ownership of their communities, equipped, trained, and ready to engage culture with truth and courage. It's about reclaiming a sense of Christian resistance that's been dormant for too long. So here's how it's unfolding. They started with Boise, Idaho, as the first chapter, small but powerful. Then they moved to Southern California, Denver, Fort Worth, and now there's a plan to expand even further into Florida, especially with the radical legislative changes happening there. Each chapter is designed to be a hub of training and mobilization, bringing together people of all ages who are committed to standing for truth and life. And it's not just casual meetings, it's structured, it's intentional, and it's focused on real-world impact. Now, training is a big piece of this. These aren't just gatherings for fellowship, they're classrooms and workshops in action. People learn how to speak boldly but graciously, how to organize effective events, how to engage with both individuals and systems in a way that's strategic. It's teaching people how to be proactive in their communities, not reactive, how to be prepared to respond when they see injustice or moral compromise. And here's the thing, the energy in these sessions is palpable. People leave feeling equipped, empowered, and motivated. It's infectious, in the best way. And the film and book launches tie directly into this momentum. The documentary is being screened in churches first, creating local buzz and conversation. But the bigger picture is coming later this year, when it's going to be streamed online for free, reaching far beyond the initial audiences. The book, Seizure 1, titled The 1916 Project, The Lying, the Witch, and the War We Are In, complements this, offering deeper insights and context, giving people the tools to understand what's happening culturally and how they can respond when advanced copies are already circulating, which means early supporters can get involved and start conversations immediately. It's not just media, it's a movement, a call to arms in a sense, for the church to wake up and engage. And speaking of calls to action, the Last Stand event next June is going to be huge. We're talking 10,000 people at least, coming together not just to celebrate life, but to be equipped, inspired, and mobilized. It's time to coincide with the memorial of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which, by the way, was not the end of the pro-life movement. It was the beginning. And the lineup, big names in music, media, and ministry are planning to be there. This isn't a small rally, it's a convergence of influence, passion, and purpose, designed to launch the next wave of local chapters and action networks across the country. And that's the brilliance of the strategy. It's not just one-off events. It's about creating a network, a living, breathing infrastructure of people who are prepared to step in, to stand up, and to lead. Each chapter acts as a training ground and deployment center for the values and principles being championed. Once people are equipped and empowered, they don't just sit back. They go out into their neighborhoods, schools, workplaces, and communities, bringing that influence with them. It's a multiplication effect. The goal is for these chapters to keep multiplying, creating a web of engagement that reaches every corner of the country. The energy is electric because it's tangible. People aren't just reading about history or moral principles, they're actively shaping the present and future. They're seeing results, small and large, as communities respond to bold action and authentic engagement. And there's a spiritual dimension too. Prayer, worship, and intentional guidance are integrated into all these efforts, ensuring that the movement isn't just about strategy, it's about purpose, conviction, and aligning with something greater than ourselves. And here's what's really motivating. It's built around the idea that the local church, the local Christian, has power to make a difference. You don't have to wait for national recognition or government approval. You can act locally, strategically, and effectively. And when local chapters succeed, it builds momentum for the national movement. It's decentralized but united, practical but visionary, focused yet expansive. And that's what makes it powerful. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they've been equipped and motivated to step into roles they might have thought were beyond them. And the planning goes beyond just events and meetings. There's marketing, outreach, communication strategies, all designed to ensure the message reaches the right audiences at the right time. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are being put into making sure that both the film and the message are accessible and impactful. And it's not about selling a product, it's about spreading truth, awareness, and engagement. People can watch, learn, and be inspired to take action immediately, whether that's organizing a local gathering, participating in a prayer walk, or starting a discussion in their own community. And as these chapters grow, they become a living testimony to the effectiveness of unity and purpose. Imagine tens of thousands of people across the country, all trained, all empowered, all mobilized, and all acting with a shared vision. That's the kind of momentum that can actually reshape culture. It's not hypothetical. It's already happening in these first chapters, and the energy is contagious. People are not just watching the movement, they're becoming part of it, and that's the point. And the sense of urgency is real. The culture is shifting. Moral clarity is being challenged. And if the church doesn't rise, the next generation will miss out on guidance, protection, and leadership. But the strategy here flips that on its head. Instead of being reactive, waiting for crises to happen, the White Rose Resistance is proactive, mobilizing before crises escalate, ensuring that communities are equipped to engage effectively when it matters most. It's strategic, it's bold, and it's happening right now. So, when you step back and look at the big picture, the chapters, the film, the book, the Last Stand event, it's more than just a movement, it's a blueprint for rebuilding Christian resistance in America. People are learning, connecting, training, and mobilizing. They're part of something bigger than themselves, something intentional, something that could change the trajectory of communities and culture. And the best part, anyone can join. You don't need a title or a platform. You just need a willingness to be trained, equipped, and to take action. It's grassroots, it's powerful, and it's alive. Okay, so let's talk about something that's kind of symbolic, but also deeply practical, the Nehemiah sword and the TR gifts. Now, when you first hear sword, you might think, oh wow, combat, battle, medieval stuff. And yes, there's that imagery, but it's way deeper than that. It represents the dual role every church leader and believer has, building and defending. Think back to Nehemiah in the Bible. He didn't just rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, he also had to defend them from constant attacks. That's exactly what this is about, holding the sword while carrying the tools to build, protect, and restore the community of faith. It's both offense and defense at the same time, and it's a call to be active, not passive. The TR gifts symbolize tools, resources, and strategies that help leaders actually put faith into action. You can't just have a sword without understanding how to wield it. Likewise, you can't build walls without the right materials. So these gifts are practical and symbolic. They remind us that defending the faith and the next generation isn't abstract. It requires intentionality, courage, and preparation. You're literally equipping people to stand up for truth, to protect children, to engage in a culture that's increasingly hostile to moral clarity, and to make a difference where it counts. And here's the thing, the cultural war is real. It's happening all around us, often subtly, but very aggressively. Kids are being indoctrinated with ideologies that are confusing and destructive. Values are being inverted. Innocence is being attacked. And if the church stands silent, if we sit back thinking someone else will do it, the next generation pays the price. That's why the Nehemiah sword isn't just a prop. It's a reminder that passivity is not an option. The walls of faith, the moral compass of our communities, the protection of children. They depend on proactive, brave action, and this is where the symbolism really hits home. Holding the sword and building the walls isn't just about ceremonial gestures. It's a mindset. It's an approach to life and ministry that says, we're not just going to manage a congregation or a community, we're going to actively engage, defend, and lead. It's a call to vigilance, to courage, and to action. And it's a call that applies to every believer, not just pastors or leaders. You have a role in protecting, equipping, and empowering others. You have a hand in the long-term spiritual and cultural health of your community. So, the takeaway? The Nehemiah sword and TR gifts are a powerful metaphor for our responsibility. Build where it's needed. Defend where it's threatened. And be proactive in shaping the culture and faith of the next generation. It's about courage, strategy, and heart. It's about stepping up, getting involved, and not waiting for someone else to do the hard work. And honestly, once you see it in action, it's inspiring. It motivates you to participate, to act, and to really make a difference. It's time to hold the sword, pick up the tools, and start building and defending what matters most. Alright, so here's the deal. This isn't just a story you watch and forget. You can actually be part of what's happening. Whether that's checking out the film, reading the book, joining a local chapter, or just starting conversations in your own community. Every action matters. It's about stepping up, speaking truth, and making a real difference. So if you're inspired, take that next step. Share this with someone who needs to hear it and be part of something bigger than yourself. Let's get to work.